The memories from the day that I got adopted. It was a very emotional time. We went to the courthouse and sat and waited for the judge to make a final decision on whether I would be able to get adopted or not. I remember sitting there for a long, long time, maybe a couple of hours. I remember seeing all these criminals and other people getting judged, and I remember the nerves that I felt. I had sweaty palms and a sweaty neck, too. My new mom and dad sat beside me, with one of my older sisters and my youngest brother. I could tell they were all anxious as well. Then came the time when the judge called my name and asked me the one question that would change my life forever. Do you want to be adopted by these two people? I immediately said yes, and then that's when my life changed for the better, the fondest memory that I have. I remember my mother crying and hugging me, and my father had the biggest smile on his face. I remember crying too, and feeling so happy. That day, I will always remember. It is forever in my heart. We used to play this game called Shark Attack when I was a kid. It was a really big deal for the kids in our cul-de-sac. We'd get around 20 to 30 players for each game. The faster, usually older kid would be the shark. Anyway, it was basically the most intense game of tag ever. Kids would climb on roofs, hop fences, and hide in sewers to escape the shark. Whenever the shark tagged another player, they too would become a shark and hunt the remaining players. I usually got caught right away because I was pretty slow, and my brother and his friends would go out of their way to find me first. Well, one game, I decided to hide in my neighbor's shed. It was unlocked, and you could lock it from the inside. It would have been the perfect hiding spot if it wasn't for the heat. As I sat there waiting for the sharks to find the remaining players, I decided to take a look around the shed. There were quite a few bins, and I was super curious to see what was inside, being a nosy little 8-year-old and all. I took this particular bin down and opened it up. It was full of Barbies. Not your everyday generic pink Dreamhouse Barbie, but event Barbies. Barbies from the 60s, 70s, 80s, holiday Barbies, and a rare limited edition one too. I wasn't really a fan of Barbie when I was a kid. She kinda made me feel insecure. I preferred stuff like Beanie Babies and Lisa Frank. But these Barbies were beautiful. So beautiful. Elegant dresses, gloves, and stockings. Glitter shoes and pearls that were sewed into the dresses. I actually ended up winning that game of Shark, and that shed became my clubhouse. I'd go there every day and just look at the dolls. I'd read their stories and pretend. Well, anyway, one day the owner caught me. I was tearing up in fear. I begged her not to call my parents. I told her it was my hiding spot. She didn't call my folks. Instead, she invited me inside. Her house was magical. She didn't have kids, but her house was full of toys. Her husband collected Legos and Hot Wheels, and she collected Barbies. Their basement was insane. Lego models everywhere. We ended up talking about Barbies for hours, and she even let me keep 2. It's a really nice memory. Weirdly, it starts off with my mother doing what she was best at. My dad arrived home from work on a very snowy night, and she picked a fight with him about something before he'd even gotten through the front door. I rushed to the door when I heard his car, as I always did, but to my horror, she hit him in the face on the front doorstep, and he just turned around and got back into the car to drive off, but not before calling me and my brother to get in with him, because obviously, he knew leaving us with her would result in another black eye for one of us. Me. It was always me. We drove a couple of miles in his company car, an MK2 Escort, possibly the dullest vehicle that ever existed, slipping and sliding on the roads because in those days, when it snowed, it snowed. We ended up in the woods where we went all the time with him, 2 or 3 times a week if we were lucky, and in the darkness, he opened that fucking Escort up and did what he called rally driving in the car park, skidding all over the place, handbrake turns, me and my brother holding on for dear life. No seatbelts because seatbelts were for wimps. The empty woods ringing out with the sound of that poor little car's engine struggling to do what he was making it do, and us kids squealing with delight. He did that for an hour or so, and then he drove us back home via a Chinese takeaway, where we got chips with curry sauce, which we ate on a disused railway bridge overlooking our house. We eventually got tired. He sighed a heavy sigh and told us it was time to go back home. I don't really remember how late it was, but it was dark, and when we got back, we had fallen asleep in the car, so he put us to bed and faced my mother without us being able to see it. I asked him about it a couple of years ago, and he told me that he needed to blow off some steam, and that he took us with him so that we would tire out when we got home. That way we wouldn't see what my mother was going to do to him. We saw it the next day, broken dishes and a split lip. He wanted to retain some shred of self-respect, at least in the eyes of his kids, and he didn't want those to be the things we remembered about my mother. And as weird as it sounds, that makes the memory all the happier for me. I had such brilliant times with my dad as a kid, and he did all those great things so we wouldn't think badly of him or my mom. I love that guy. One of my fondest memories of my childhood was playing in the mud. My mom was growing flowers in most of the yard, but the area behind the garage was the play area for us. We could dig holes, add water, and make a big batch of mud. The only rule was that we needed to fill the hole when we were finished. If it rained right after filling the hole, you could have 3 or 4 feet of mud. This happened once, and we stuck my little brother in the mud hole. He squealed like a stuck pig. Mom came out to see what all the racket was about. She told us to pull him out, but as we tried to do so, his shoes just came off. Mom then ordered us to go down into the mud and get his shoes. That meant that we had to go into the mud head first to get them. Another time, the neighbors behind us were putting in a swimming pool. We asked the tractor operator if he could dump some of the dirt over the fence. He said that he would if our mother said she was okay with it, which she did. We ended up with a pile of dirt about 4 or 5 feet high. Water mixed with freshly dug dirt made premium mud. When it was finally time to go back indoors, Mom made us take all of our clothes off on the back patio and squirt us off with a hose. She then already had a warm bath ready for us when it was time to go inside. Oh man, I don't even care if this gets buried. I just want to type out this memory because it's cathartic. My best memory is when I was about 11, so around 2001 or 2002. My cousin came over one Friday night after school to stay the whole weekend with me and my brother, which was the best. That night, he pulls out his Xbox and asked me if I had heard of Halo yet. He had just got it for Christmas and wanted to show it to us. We had PlayStation, so he brought his own Xbox. Before we played Halo though, he wanted to show us the demo of a game called Fusion Frenzy, and I remember that there was a level where you were running up a screw, and if you hit one of the obstacles it made a funny sound. So funny that we spent way too long replaying that level, just to hear that sound and laugh and laugh. He finally turned on Halo, and it blew me the fuck away. I had never seen anything like it at the time. Looking up into the sky and seeing that massive Halo ring just got so much wonder out of me. My brother fell asleep by midnight, and me and my cousin plowed through the whole game the rest of the night. We woke up the next morning to watch cartoons and have cereal. Then my cousin and my brother taught me how to play Yu-Gi-Oh! After that, we pulled out the giant tub of Crazy Bones that we had and compared and traded all of ours together. For Saturday night, we stayed up and watched Pet Sematary. The scene with Zelda scared us so much, we stayed up and played Pokemon with all the lights on in the living room until we fell asleep with them in our hands. I even remember tearing up when he had to leave on Sunday. It was the coolest weekend. When I was young, my parents had to work a ton just to make ends meet. They both worked at least 70 hours per week. My grandparents helped take care of me a lot at the time. That being said, my parents weren't really able to be as present in my school life, like helping with fundraisers or field trips, PTA, open house, attending school plays or recitals, all that stuff. I was sad and a bit jealous when seeing other people's moms and dads around school, seemingly all the time. But I was a fairly precocious child, and I knew that my parents were just doing what they had to do to take care of me. When I was in first grade, I think age 7, my class was taking a field trip to the zoo. My dad drove me to school that morning just like any other day, except this time he said he wanted to walk me to class. I was so happy just to get some extra attention and a few more minutes with him. Then, when we got to the classroom, he gave me the surprise of my life when he said that he was staying to help chaperone our field trip for the zoo. I cannot even begin to explain how happy I was. I'm crying now just thinking about it. They split the kids up into groups of 3 for the chaperones to take care of, but my group ended up just being 2, which happened to be me and my best friend. This was too good to be true. The teachers laid some ground rules before letting us all loose in the zoo. At the time, Jurassic Park was super popular, and the zoo had a special Jurassic Park section where you had to pay extra to get in. The teacher said that no one was allowed to go in there, as it wouldn't be fair to the others. My dad gave 0 fucks, though, and took me and my friend there anyway. It was amazing. He bought me and my friend all sorts of junk food, and even some Jurassic Park souvenirs that we had to hide in our lunchboxes so our teachers wouldn't see. Jurassic Park was the first movie I had ever seen in the theater, with my dad. I felt like I was really winning in life that day. It honestly just felt like a day at the zoo with my dad and my friend, not like a school day or a field trip. I'm 31 years old now, and it's crazy to look back and think about how my dad was only 27 years old on that day. He accomplished so much while he was so young. Eventually, all of my parents' hard work paid off, and they both made it to high-paying leadership positions in their fields. Eventually, my mom was able to stop working altogether. Unfortunately, I was a shithead teenager by then, and no longer wanted to see my parents around school, but at least she got to be there for my little sister. I'll never forget that day at the zoo. It was the best day of my life. I had a pretty rough childhood, and I grew up without a father figure. I ran away from my abusive adoptive mother at 15. I moved in with a friend and her parents, who were also foster parents. When they got custody of me, they gave me the option to call them mom and dad if I wanted. Because I was trying to distance myself from my old life as much as possible, I did, but I didn't really know how to fit into a family, and I always felt like a mismatched puzzle piece. One day, my foster father was driving me somewhere. I forget where, school maybe, and Cherry Pie by Warren came on the radio. I was a really shy kid. I was quiet, socially awkward, and easily embarrassed. So when Dad started singing along dramatically, and I do mean dramatically, as in top of his lungs belting it out and leaning over to my side of the car while he did the high notes in falsetto, I was horrified. I curled up in a ball in the passenger seat and mumbled, "Oh my God, you are so embarrassing." He started giggling like a kid. At that exact moment, I realized I was having the first stereotypical middle-aged dad tortures teenage daughter moment of my entire life. This feeling of warmth and belonging washed over me, and I will never forget how I felt realizing I actually had a father. I'm 24 now, Dad is my best friend, and takes great joy in embarrassing the absolute hell out of me regularly. It's 1986. I'm 9 years old, and I come downstairs to get ready for school. My dad is reading the paper, and he says, "Hey Corey, what do you know about comets?" I immediately spout off everything a space-addicted 9-year-old kid can or should know about comets. My dad just beams at me and tells me my bedtime will be postponed. Night falls, and Dad comes home early. We get into his Ford Escort and drive to KB Toys, where he buys me a pair of G.I. Joe binoculars just as they're closing. I can still remember what they looked like in the packaging. We drive to a subdivision that's under construction and park on a mound of dirt that is now someone's home. We both lay on the hood of that car and look at the stars. We talk about space, we talk about life. He tells me that the next time this comet passes by Earth, it'll be long gone, but he hopes that I'll watch it again and remember what it was like to be a child staring at the night sky with his dad. We never actually saw Halley's Comet that night. Our binoculars were too cheap, the light pollution was too strong, and the comet was too far away. To be honest, I think I prefer it that way, because what I want to remember about that day has nothing to do with the comet at all. There's a great many things I wanted for my life. Some of them have come to pass, and others never will, but above all, I hope that one day I will sit on a mound of dirt as an old man. I will sit with the great love of my life, and our children, and our children's children, and we, all of us, will look at the stars. Maybe we'll see a comet, or maybe we won't, but we'll look regardless, and we will think of the ones that we have loved.